did this to prove Philip. He tries us to see what it is that we will do. And a lot of times what we do is what Philip did. There's no way. There is no way. Do you realize how much it would take to accomplish this? When what we need to do is turn to Him. So Philip said that 200 penny worth of bread is not sufficient for them, that every one of them may take a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, saith unto him, There is a lad here which hath 5 barley loaves and 2 small fishes, but what are they among so many? So Philip said, there just ain't enough money. There ain't no way. Andrew said, well, there is this little bit, but what can we do with that? Now, he may not have asked it in the right way, or you may read this a different way, but he said it this way. What is that among so many? But a lot of time, what we need to do in our life is to look at what we do have and then look to the Lord and say, what can I do with this? How can I make this work? How am I going to use this to accomplish what needs to be accomplished? I don't know how. That's what Andrew said. What is this among so many? But at least he said, we got a little bit. There's something to work with. I'm going to tell you something. As long as you have faith, as long as you have trust, there's something to work with. And I'm going to tell you, God don't need much to work with. He just needs somebody who is willing to allow Him to work. That is what He needs. It goes on here, and he said, there's the lad with the barley and the fishes. And Jesus said, make the men sit down. And in one of the other accounts of this, it said, so they made them to sit down in companies. And the next thing that has to happen is we have to be obedient. They sat down to receive what they were going to receive. They sat down out of obedience. A lot of time when we got an issue, when we got a problem, when we got a situation, when we got a circumstance, we are trying to figure out how to do and what to do. And maybe God will tell us, the Spirit will lead us to do a certain thing or not do a certain thing, whatever it is that we're supposed to be doing. We have to be obedient to that and wait for whatever it is that is going to come. Wait for whatever it is that God is going to do. These people were made to sit down in company, and so they were obedient to that. They sat down in companies. And it goes on and says, Jesus took the loaves, and when He had given thanks, He distributed to the disciples, and the disciples to them that were set down, and likewise of the fishes, as much as they would. So they were made to sit down, and Christ took the bread, and He took the fish, and He blessed it, and He gave it to the disciples, and they were to pass it out. And you all know the account. They ate all that they wanted to eat. They ate till they were full. They ate till they couldn't eat anymore. It said they ate as much as they would. Go back to what I said. It only takes a little bit given to God to accomplish great things. God doesn't expect you to have a huge bank account. God doesn't expect you to have all this education. God doesn't expect you to have mass amounts of whatever it is. God just expects you to give whatever it is that you have and allow Him to use it. Now, I've been talking a lot about finances and this and that, but that's true in our spiritual lives too. Give to God what you are and let God use what you are, and God can accomplish great things through you. You may not think so. You may not see the value. You may not see the worth. You may think, I'm not enough. And anybody who looked at this situation would have said, those 5 loaves and a couple fish ain't enough. But look what they became in the hands of Christ. And look what you can become in the hands of Christ. Nowhere does it say you have to have a certain amount of education, you have to have a certain amount of money, you have to speak a certain way, all these other requirements. What He said was you have to be a willing vessel. That's what He said. He said, give yourself to me. And if we give ourselves to Him, He can do amazing things. It doesn't have to be what the world may look at as great or what the world may look at as big. It just has to be entrusted to Him, Amen. Given to Him to do with what He will. Now He told them to sit down in companies, and they didn't know what they were going to receive. They didn't know what was coming. But Jesus took the fish and the bread, and He blessed it, and He broke it, and He gave it to the disciples to begin to distribute it. And when He distributed it, they all got all that they could handle. They all ate all that they could. And so those disciples, what were they? They were doing the will of Christ. They did what they were commanded to do. And when they did what they were commanded, it wasn't that they did anything. They didn't increase the bread. They didn't increase the fish. But they took what the Lord had blessed, and they took it and they began to distribute it. And we can do the very same thing. We as teachers, we as preachers, we as every Christian can take this word that God has given us and use this word to feed millions, to feed hundreds, to feed one or two, whoever it is that God puts in your path, whoever it is that you come in contact with. You have to realize and understand, you don't have to have something that will draw them. You don't have to have something that will inspire them, because God will give it to you. And all you got to do is take what He has given you and distribute it. And those who receive it can be filled. Those who receive it can get what they need, as much as they need, as much as they want. Listen, when this started out, Philip said there just ain't enough. Andrew said, what is this little bit among so many? But when Jesus took it and blessed it, look what happened with it. Those who distributed had nothing to do with it being blessed, had nothing to do with it increasing, had nothing to do with any of that. They just obeyed the Master and took what He had given and shared it with them. And that's what we do with this word. We don't have anything to do with meeting people's needs, with their salvation, other than distributing what we have already been given. And God will take that and increase it and give them what they need. Something else that I want to look at here is we're looking at this section. Everybody who had a part in this also was blessed. When they finished up there, listen to what it said. Therefore they gathered them together and filled 12 baskets with the fragments of the 5 barley loaves, which remained over and above unto them that had eaten. What happened to those 12 baskets that were taken up? I don't know. The Bible doesn't tell us. But a couple things I thought of when I was reading it. Did that little boy get to take that home and they had bread for a long, long time because he had given his little lunch? Because he had given that, few loaves and fishes? I don't know. But that's something that could have happened. He took and gave that little bit, and look how it was increased. And he could have been blessed by that. It says that there were 12 baskets. How many disciples were there? There were 12. They did what the Master had called them to do and distributed that. And then there were 12 baskets left over. Look at the increase from each person. Each one of them took that little bit that was given to them in the beginning, and that little bit came back to them as a basketful. You can look at this a lot of different ways, but the point that I'm trying to make is you have no idea what God will do with what you will give Him. You have no idea what He can accomplish when you give Him what you got. What little you are, what little you have, give it to Him. Let Him bless it. Let Him do with it what only He can do with it. It's true in our spiritual lives. It's true as witnesses for Him, but it's also true in our natural lives. I said that He cares, and as I started out saying, there have been prayer requests and things about financial things and this and that. Well, take and understand, He cares about that, and that little bit that you got can do amazing things, can become big things. I've heard this testimony all my Christian life, and I had this testimony, and you may have this testimony. I have had times when there just was not enough money to pay all the bills and to buy the groceries and to keep gas in the vehicle. I have lived like that, but you know what? All the bills got paid. The groceries got bought. The gas tank got filled up. And I cannot tell you to this day how that happened.
Amen.
That's the God we serve.
Amen.
When we trust Him, when we believe Him, when we give it to Him and let Him use it, let Him do what only He can do. But when we get all caught up in it ourselves and get worried and get down and all of those things, then we get in the way. If they would have went with what was first said, when Philip said, "What shall we buy bread that these may eat?" It would take 200 pennyworth of bread. That's not sufficient for them. Philip was just saying, "Yeah, it can't be done." That's what Philip was saying. In one of the other accounts, one of the disciples said, "Send them away into the villages and stuff and let them buy stuff." And a lot of times that's what we push it off, push it off, push it off. There's got to go do something, this, that, whatever, instead of letting God do what God can do. Letting God do what only God can do. I don't know if I'm making this clear enough, but I hope you're getting it. It doesn't matter what your situation is. It doesn't matter what your circumstance is in this life. If you give it to God, He can handle it. He can take care of it. Not only can He meet the need, He can do exceedingly abundantly above all that you can even imagine. He will overdo it. Look, He overdid it here. He can overdo it in your life, in whatever situation you've got. And then apply that to your spiritual. Give God what you got. Let Him use what you got. You would be amazed what He can do with you if you are that willing vessel and you give yourself to Him. So they gathered up the 12 baskets over and above them that had eaten. And then it says in verse 14, "Then those men, when they had seen the miracle that Jesus did, said, 'This is of a truth that prophet that should come into the world.' When Jesus therefore perceived that they would come and take Him by force to make Him a king, He departed again into a mountain Himself alone." So they saw the miracles that Jesus had done. And they were going to make Him a king. Why were they going to make Him a king? We're going to find out here a little later in the chapter. But Jesus, when He saw that they would make Him a king by force, He departed into a mountain alone. Now I want you to jump to verse 22 of that chapter. He went into a mountain alone, and in this little section we're skipping is when the disciples were sent ahead. He walked on the water to them. But then we get to verse 22, it says, "The day following, when the people which stood on the other side of the sea saw that there was none other boat there, save that one whereunto His disciples were entered, and that Jesus went not with His disciples into the boat, but that His disciples were gone away alone. Howbeit there came other boats from Tiberias nigh unto the place where they did eat bread, after that the Lord had given thanks. When the people therefore saw that Jesus was not there, neither His disciples, they also took shipping and came to Capernaum, seeking for Jesus. And when they had found Him on the other side of the sea, they said unto Him, Rabbi, when camest thou hither? Jesus answered them and said, Verily, verily, I say unto you, ye seek me not because ye saw the miracles, but because ye did eat of the loaves and were filled. Labor not for the meat which perisheth, but for that meat which endureth unto everlasting life, which the Son of Man shall give unto you. For Him hath God the Father sealed." And we're going to stop reading right there. We had that account of the feeding of the 5,000.